The lights of the ballroom in Toronto's Fairmont Royal York Hotel were almost blinding. Everything felt perfect, like a dream. I stood on the small stage, my hand in Dmitry Volkov's. My dress was silk, my heart was full, and my family, the great Petrov legal dynasty, watched from the front row. My father, Viktor Petrov, stepped up to the microphone, his smile as wide and polished as the marble floor. "Thank you all for coming," his voice boomed. "Irina and I are so proud. But we have one more little secret to share tonight." A playful laugh rippled through the crowd. "You see, we've loved Dmitry since the day he joined the firm. But I've loved him much longer. I'm proud to announce that my son, Dmitry, is finally marrying my daughter." The room gasped. I felt my smile freeze. I looked at my mother, Irina, who was as pale as a ghost. "What is he talking about?" I whispered to Dmitry. He looked just as shocked. "Victor, what?" Dmitry said, his voice tight. My father laughed, a sound that suddenly seemed cold. "Oh, no, not her son." He beamed, looking right at me, but his eyes were like ice. "My son. Dmitry is my biological son, Alina." He spread his arms wide, as if presenting a prize. "My brilliant, beautiful children, my son and my daughter, together." The microphone squealed. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. The man I loved. The man I was engaged to. He was my half-brother. The humiliation was a physical force, burning my skin and stealing my breath. I saw the cameras flashing, the mouths of our guests hanging open. I locked eyes with Dmitry, who looked pale and sick. I didn't wait to see if it was a lie. I turned and ran. If you've ever felt your entire world fall apart in a single second, you know what that moment felt like. Share this story if you believe in fighting back after being broken. I didn't grab my clutch. I didn't grab my shoes. I just ran. I pushed through the heavy ballroom doors, ignoring the shouts of Alina behind me. I ran past the shocked valets, my bare feet hitting the cold, wet pavement of the city. My couture dress was a cruel joke, tearing on the grates as I stumbled down the sidewalk. I had no phone. No wallet. I had left everything in Dmitry's jacket pocket. My entire life, my identity, was back in that ballroom with the man who was my brother. A cold Toronto rain began to pour, turning from a drizzle to a downpour in seconds. It plastered my hair to my face and smeared the mascara I had so carefully applied. I just wanted to disappear. I turned off King Street into a dark, narrow alley, gasping for breath, my back sliding against the wet brick. And that's when I saw them. Two men, huddled at the other end of the alley, turned as they heard me. They saw my white dress, my diamonds. "Well, look at this," one of them sneered, taking a slow step toward me. A little princess, lost from her castle. My heart, which I thought couldn't break anymore, now hammered in pure terror. I was trapped. "Step away from her." The voice was low, firm, and cut through the rain like a knife. It didn't come from the men in front of me. It came from behind. I turned, my body trembling. A man stood at the alley's entrance. He was tall, but that's not what I noticed. He was wearing a simple, flour-dusted apron over his clothes. He was holding a long, flat wooden peel, the kind used for pulling bread from an oven. He didn't look like a hero. He looked like a baker. The two men laughed. "Or what, bread boy?" one of them said. "You going to bake us a cake?" The baker, Luca, didn't move. His eyes were steady and calm. He wasn't looking at them with anger. He was looking with a quiet, solid certainty. I said, "Step away." There was no fear in his voice. The men looked at each other, and the laughter died. They saw something in his stance that I couldn't. After a long, tense moment, the first man spat on the ground. "Whatever. She's not worth it." They sneered and disappeared into the shadows at the other end. The alley was silent again, except for the rain. The man turned to me, his voice soft now. "You're safe. I've got you." He took off his own worn, warm jacket and wrapped it around my shivering shoulders. His name was Luca. He led me through a heavy steel door at the back of the alley, and I found myself in the back of a bakery. It was dark, but the air was warm and smelled like cinnamon and yeast. My legs were shaking so hard I could barely stand. "Upstairs," he said gently. He led me up a narrow flight of stairs into a small, clean apartment above the shop. It was simple, with mismatched furniture and crayon drawings taped to the fridge. He didn't ask me what happened. He didn't ask why a woman in a ruined designer dress was in his alley. He just handed me a clean towel and a thick grey sweatshirt. "You can change in there," he pointed to a small bathroom. When I came out, he was gone, but a small girl with wild dark curls was peeking out from a doorway. She was maybe 6 or 7. "Papa," she whispered. "Is she an angel?" She was pointing at my ruined white dress, which I held in a bundle. Luca came out from her room, gently guiding her back to bed. "She's just a lady who needed help, Anya." He turned to me, his face kind. "You can have the couch." I sat on the old, comfortable sofa, and the second I was still, the dam broke. I didn't just cry, I broke into silent, racking sobs that shook my entire body. I must have fallen asleep, because I woke up with a start. The room was dark, but a soft morning light was coming through the window. I was covered with a heavy, handmade quilt. My ankle, which I must have twisted when I was running, had been gently and expertly wrapped in a bandage. I looked over at a nearby drying rack. My dress, which had been a muddy, torn mess, was hanging there. It was still torn, but someone had carefully hand-washed it and hung it to dry. I sat up, my head pounding. I could hear quiet sounds from the kitchen. Luca was standing by the counter, packing 2 small lunches into paper bags. He didn't seem surprised to see me awake. He just turned, grabbed a steaming mug from the counter, and handed it to me. "Tea," he said. He then placed a fresh, warm pastry on a napkin on the small coffee table. "Eat." I stared at him. He didn't ask questions. He didn't stare. He didn't demand to know who I was. This simple, non-transactional kindness was so foreign to me, it felt more shocking than my father's announcement. I took the mug, and the warmth spread through my cold hands. I wanted to cry all over again. Luca turned on the small television in the corner, keeping the volume low. He and Anya were eating breakfast at their tiny table. And then, I saw my face. Legal heiress Alina Petrova vanishes after shocking engagement party. The report showed me running from the hotel, a blurry, terrified figure. Then it cut to my father, Victor, standing at a podium, his face a perfect mask of concerned father. He pleaded for my safe return, telling the world I was confused and had suffered a moment of emotional distress. He made me sound like I was crazy. He was already controlling the story, painting me as the unstable one. But then the news anchor said something that made my blood run cold. "This new photo," she said, sent in from a private source, shows Viktor Petrov and Dmitry Volkov at a Blue Jays game 5 years ago. The picture filled the screen. It wasn't a corporate event. It was just them, laughing, eating hot dogs, looking exactly like a father and son. Dmitry didn't look shocked. He looked happy. He had known. He had known for years. My entire relationship, our engagement, our love, it was all a lie. A long, cruel, calculated lie. I was staring blankly at the wall. The TV was off, but the image of my father and Dmitry at that game was burned into my mind. How long had they been planning this? What was the point? I felt hollow, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Luca was downstairs, the bell on the shop door jingling as customers came in. I was alone with my thoughts until small footsteps approached me. It was Anya. She had been quiet all morning, just watching me with wide, curious eyes. Now, she held out a piece of paper. It was a crayon drawing. It showed a tall man with brown hair, a little girl with wild curls, and a stick-figure woman with a bright yellow crayon crown on her head. "That's you," Anya said proudly, pointing to the woman. "You're the queen." Then she pointed to a small, empty space next to the figures, a patch of white paper they hadn't touched. "I left this empty for a long time," she said, her voice serious. "Papa said I should wait. I think it's for you." My throat tightened. In my whole life, no one had ever left a space for me. My life was about being a Petrov, filling the role my father demanded. I had duties, expectations, and a part to play. But I had never just been given a place. Later that morning, the bell on the bakery door jingled, but this time it sounded different. Angry. I heard low, serious voices. I crept to the top of the stairs and looked down through the railing. Two men in sharp, expensive suits, the kind I used to see every day, were standing in the middle of the shop. They looked completely out of place next to the shelves of bread. They were talking to Luca. "We know she's here," one of them said. He was from my father's firm. I recognized him. His name was Boris. "Mr. Petrov is very worried. He's offering a reward." Boris slid a white envelope across the counter. $50,000. "Just tell us where she is. A thank you for your trouble." My heart stopped. That was more money than Luca probably made in 2 years. He could change his life, fix up the bakery, send Anya to a private school. I held my breath. Luca didn't even look at the envelope. He just pushed it back. "This is a bakery," he said, his voice flat and calm. "Buy something, or get out." Boris's face turned red. "You're making a big mistake." "The only mistake," Luca said, "is you, standing in front of paying customers." He gestured to an elderly woman waiting patiently. The lawyers, defeated, stormed out. Luca had protected me, again, without even blinking. I felt so useless. Luca had saved me, fed me, and turned down a fortune to protect me. I was hiding in his apartment while he worked. "I want to help," I said, coming down the stairs after the lawyers were gone. "Please. Let me do something." Luca looked at me, at my soft hands, and my borrowed sweatshirt. He must have seen the desperation in my eyes, because he nodded. "Okay," he said. "Aprons on the hook." I was a lawyer. I could argue a case in front of the Supreme Court. But in that bakery, I was hopelessly clumsy. I didn't know how to proof dough. I didn't know how to score a baguette. He tasked me with watching a tray of croissants. I got lost in my own thoughts, replaying my father's betrayal, and the next thing I knew, the entire bakery was filling with black smoke. "Alina!" Luca yelled. He ran to the oven, pulling out a tray of blackened, burning pastries. I had set them on fire. I wanted to sink through the floor. "I'm so sorry." I started, but Luca just looked at the smoking tray, then at me, and he started to laugh. He tossed me a clean apron. "Let's try again. This time, you need." We ended up covered in flour, and for the first time in my life, I found myself laughing. A real, genuine laugh that felt rusty in my chest. I was sweeping the floor of the shop, actually feeling useful, when the bell jingled. My back was to the door. "We're closing," I said, not looking up. "Alina." My blood ran cold. I dropped the broom. It was Dimitri. He was standing there, his expensive suit soaked, his hair a mess. He looked terrible. He looked like he'd been crying. "Alina, thank God," he said, rushing toward me. I instinctively stepped back. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice low. "Alina, please. You have to listen to me. I swear, I didn't know the whole truth." His eyes were wide and pleading. "Victor, your father, he told me we were related about a year ago. He said it was a test of my loyalty to the firm, to the family." He grabbed my hands. "But I love you, Alina. I don't care about the blood. He's crazy. Let's run away. Just us. We can go to Vancouver, London, anywhere. I have money saved." He was crying, his words tumbling out so fast. It was so desperate, so passionate, it almost seemed real. For a terrible second, I was confused. Was he a victim, too? I told him to leave. I watched him walk away, a broken man in the rain, and my heart was a mess of confusion. That night, after Anya was asleep, I told Luca what had happened. I told him what Dimitri said, how he pleaded. "He seemed so real," I whispered. "Maybe he's a victim in this, too." Luca was quiet for a long time, just wiping down the clean counter of his kitchen. Finally, he stopped and turned to face me. He pulled a worn wallet from his pocket and took out a faded photograph. It was of a beautiful woman with a bright smile, standing with a younger Luca. My wife, Elena, he said. She was from a family like yours. From Rosedale. He pointed out the window, in the direction of the wealthy neighborhood. They controlled everything she did, who she saw, what she studied. When she chose me, a baker with nothing, they cut her off completely. No money, no family, nothing. He traced her face in the photo. She was free, and she was the happiest I'd ever seen her. But she lost her family. And I lost her to cancer 2 years ago. He put the photo away and looked me straight in the eyes. Control isn't love, Elena. It's a cage. It doesn't matter if he's crying. Is he controlling you, or is he setting you free? Luca's words hit me like a slap. Control isn't love. My father's control. Dimitri's love. It was all a cage. My grief was suddenly gone, replaced by a chilling, cold clarity. I wasn't just a betrayed fiancé. I was a lawyer. And I had been played. Luca, I said, my voice sharp. Your computer. May I use it? He nodded, and I sat at the small, old desktop computer in the corner of his living room. I logged into my corporate email. Blocked. I tried my personal accounts. Blocked. I tried my bank accounts. Frozen. My trust fund. Frozen. My father had cut me off. I was penniless, just like he knew I would be. But he had made one mistake. He forgot who he trained. I still had my credentials for the firm's private client server. I logged in. And there it was. It wasn't just a family betrayal. It was a massive, criminal fraud. I found a series of huge, hidden transfers from the firm's main client trust accounts, all funneled into a single, anonymous shell corporation. I dug deeper. The corporation was registered in the Cayman Islands. And the sole director, Dmitry Volkov. They weren't just humiliating me. They were stealing. I was still staring at the screen, my mind racing, when I heard the bakery bell jingle again. It was late, after closing. Luca had gone to lock up. I heard a woman's voice, high and frantic. Please, I just need to see her. I went to the top of the stairs. It was my mother, Irina. She looked terrible, her eyes red and swollen. Elena, she cried when she saw me, rushing to the bottom of the stairs. Oh, my baby, thank God. She was weeping, real tears. You must come home. Your father, he's furious. He's going to disown you. He's lost his mind. She pleaded with me, her hands clasped. I didn't know, Elena, I swear. Not until he said it on the mic. He told me it was just a small joke he was playing. I'm a victim, just like you. Please, come home with me. We'll figure this out. I almost believed her. My heart ached for her. I wanted my mother. I took a step down. And then I saw it. Through the front window of the bakery, parked across the street under a streetlight, the black sedan. The family car. The one my father always used. My mother wasn't here to save me. She was here to retrieve me. She was just another one of his soldiers. He lied, I said, my voice suddenly cold. I stopped on the stairs. My mother's tears stopped, her face hardening when she saw my expression. They all lied. My grief was gone. My confusion was gone. All that was left was a chilling, quiet rage. I was no longer a victim. I was a lawyer. And I was about to go to war. I turned and walked back up the stairs. Elena, don't you dare walk away from me, my mother shrieked. I ignored her. I went to Luca, who was standing in the kitchen, watching me, his face grim. He had seen the car, too. Luca, I need a favor, I said, my voice steady. I need to get to Osgood Hall first thing in the morning. To the Law Society. And I need a burner phone. He didn't ask why. He just nodded and grabbed his keys from the hook. He turned to the small hallway that led to his daughter's room. Anya, he called out, his voice soft but firm. Pack your bag, little bird. We're going to go visit your Aunt Svetlana in Muskoka for a few days. He was all in. He was protecting his daughter, and he was helping me. He was giving me the one thing I needed, a fighting chance. The next morning, Luca left before dawn with Anya. He gave me the keys to the bakery and the apartment, and a small, prepaid burner phone. "Be safe," was all he said. I waited until 9 a.m. I put on the cleanest clothes I had, Luca's grey sweatshirt and a pair of jeans he had bought me from a thrift store. I looked nothing like Alina Petrova, Bay Street's rising star. I looked like a student. I walked into the historic building of Osgood Hall, right to the offices of the Law Society of Ontario. I didn't go to a rival firm. I didn't go to the police. I went to the one place my father couldn't control. I asked for Katia Orlova. She was a fierce, independent prosecutor for the society, a woman known for her integrity. I had faced her in court once, and I had respected her. She agreed to see me. I sat down in her small, cluttered office. "Ms. Orlova," I said, my voice not shaking, "I'm Alina Petrova. And I'm here to report a multimillion-dollar fraud at my family's firm, and I have the receipts." I had spent all night on Luca's computer, emailing every file to a new, secret account. Katia Orlova was quiet, her face impossible to read as I laid out the whole story. The engagement, the announcement, the fraud, the shell corporation. When I was finished, she just nodded slowly. "I'll need access to those files," she said. I gave it to her. "This is a serious allegation, Ms. Petrova. If you are right, this will be the end of your family's legacy." "I know," I said. "Legacy is just a word for a cage." She told me to go somewhere safe. "Somewhere no one could find me. They will fight back, and they will fight dirty," she warned. I nodded and left her office. I took a bus, then another, until I was at the main terminal. I bought a ticket north, to Muskoka. Luca met me at the small bus stop, his old truck rattling as it idled. He drove me and Anya, who was thrilled to have a sleepover, to his sister Svetlana's remote farmhouse. It was quiet, safe, and completely off the grid. That night, as Anya slept, Luca and I sat on the porch. He told me he used to be a paramedic. He told me about a call he couldn't get to in time. "You can't save everyone, Alina," he said, looking at the stars. "But you have to save yourself." I spent 3 days at the farmhouse. It was the first time in my life I had felt true silence. I helped Svetlana in her garden. I played hide-and-seek with Anya. I felt, for the first time, like a person, not a project. On the 3rd day, my burner phone rang. It was Katia Orlova. "Alina," she said, her voice grim. "The fraud is real. We've started tracing the money." "And?" I asked, my heart pounding. "And it's worse than you thought," she said. "The Shell Corporation is in Dimitri's name, yes. But the money wasn't just staying there. We found a second set of transfers." I waited, my stomach twisting. "Alina," he was moving the money into a new, high-yield investment account. "An account he opened last month, in your name." I couldn't breathe. "What?" "They weren't just cutting you out," Katia said. "They were setting you up. You, the loyal daughter, the new fiancé. The engagement was the final piece of the trap. It tied you to him, to this new venture. When the money went missing, they would have fled the country, and all the evidence would have pointed straight to you. You were going to be their scapegoat." The phone in my hand felt like a block of ice. I wasn't just a jilted lover. I was the designated criminal. The confused daughter who stole millions and fled. My father's speech at the party, my mother's retrieval, it was all damage control to get me back before I realized what they had done. The betrayal was so deep, so absolute, it was almost brilliant. That night, the burner phone rang again. This time, I knew the number. It was my father. I let it ring 4 times, then picked up. "Alina," his voice was slick, warm, and familiar. The voice that used to read me bedtime stories. "Darling, enough of this. This little game has gone on long enough." "Game?" I said, my voice flat. "This tantrum. I've unfrozen your accounts. The money is back. Come back to the firm. We'll forget this whole brother thing. It was a joke, a test. It was in poor taste, I admit. Dimitri is waiting for you. He forgives you." He forgives me. My blood ran cold. He still thought I was a child. He thought money was the only thing I understood. I'll be there tomorrow, I said, my voice suddenly sweet. For the board meeting. I could hear his sigh of relief. That's my girl. The next day, I walked into the Glass and Steel Tower on Bay Street. I wasn't wearing my borrowed sweatshirt. Luca's sister had given me an old, simple, black suit. It was a decade out of style, but it was clean, and it fit. I felt like a warrior. I walked into the glass-walled boardroom. They were all there. My father, Victor, at the head of the table. My mother, Irina, sitting beside him, her makeup perfect. And Dimitri, at his side, looking smug. Ah, she's back, Victor beamed at the other board members. See. All is forgiven. Now, Alina, we just need you to sign these papers, a few small asset transfer agreements. He slid a thick document toward me. I didn't look at it. I held up my hand. No. The room went quiet. I looked at Dimitri. You knew. His smile faltered. I looked at my mother. You were complicit. Her hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. I looked at my father. And you're a thief. Victor's face turned from a smile to a mask of rage. What is this? He scoffed. You're hysterical. Am I? I said, my voice calm. Just then, the boardroom doors opened. Katia Orlova walked in, flanked by 2 investigators from the Law Society and 2 plainclothed Toronto police officers. Victor Petrov, Katia said, her voice ringing with authority. Dmitry Volkov. You are under investigation for conspiracy, wire fraud, and embezzlement of client funds. Dmitry lunged at me, his face a mask of hate. You bitch. You ruined everything. One of the officers grabbed him, restraining him easily. My mother let out a short, sharp shriek and fainted, sliding gracefully from her chair. My father didn't move. He just stared at me, his face purple with rage. You've ruined this family, he roared, his voice bouncing off the glass. You've destroyed everything we built. I looked at him, at the man who had been my god for my entire life, and I felt nothing. No fear. No sadness. Just release. No, I said, my voice quiet, but it carried across the thunderous silence of the room. You did. You used the law as a weapon to control people, to steal, to build a fake empire. I'm just using the law as a shield. I turned to the other board members, who were watching in pale-faced horror. I'm resigning from this firm, effective immediately. And as the only senior partner not currently under indictment, I said, looking at Katia, who nodded, I'm filing a motion to dissolve this firm. All assets will be frozen, to pay back the clients you stole from. I wasn't just leaving. I was scorching the earth of their corrupt kingdom. I was taking away their power, their money, and their name. I was giving the money back to the people they hurt. That was my revenge. I didn't wait to see them taken away. I didn't wait for the questions. I just turned, walked out of the boardroom, and didn't look back. I walked out of the Bay Street Tower, leaving the chaos and the sirens behind me. I didn't take a cab. I walked to the corner and got on the Queen Street streetcar. I watched the city go by, the suits, the shoppers, the students. It felt like I was seeing it for the first time. I rode it all the way to Kensington Market and walked the 2 blocks to the bakery. The open sign was on. I pushed the door, and the little bell jingled. The shop was warm and smelled of fresh rye bread. Luca was there, wiping down the counter, the afternoon sun streaming in. He looked up when I entered. His face was calm, his eyes searching mine. He didn't ask how it went. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just saw me. He nodded toward the back kitchen. You're just in time, he said, a small smile playing on his lips. The dough needs punching. 6 months later, I stood on a small platform in Kensington Market, not far from the bakery. I was wearing jeans and a simple sweater. I was cutting a bright red ribbon. I'm proud to open the Aurora Clinic, I said into the small microphone. It was a pro bono legal clinic, named for the new dawn, for victims of domestic and financial abuse. It was funded by the clean parts of my inheritance, the money my grandmother had left me, which my father could never touch. The Petrov-Volkov trial was the talk of the city. My father and Dimitri were facing years in prison. My mother was in a private wellness center in Rosedale, having pled ignorance to everything. I didn't care. I was busy. Luca stood next to me, holding Anya's hand. He was the clinic's new operations manager. He made sure our heat was on and our files were in order. He was the solid ground beneath my feet. Anya beamed at me, holding a drawing of the new clinic. She was the reason I knew what family meant. That evening, the three of us were back in the small apartment above the bakery. The smell of cinnamon was gone. Instead, it smelled like pancakes. We were making them for dinner, a messy, chaotic affair. Anya was chattering about her school project, her face smudged with flour. Luca was trying to flip a pancake, and it landed half off the pan. We were all laughing. It was small, it was simple, and it was perfectly, wonderfully real. After dinner, Anya ran to her room and came back with a piece of paper. "I made this for you, Alina," she said. I took it. It was a new version of her first drawing. The tall man, the little girl, and the queen with the yellow crown. But the empty space was gone. In its place, she had drawn a stick figure of me, in a purple dress, holding her hand. "See?" Anya said proudly. "I told you it was for you. Now it's official." I pulled her into a hug, my throat tight. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," I whispered. I looked up at Luca over her head, and he was watching us, his eyes full of a quiet, steady love. We were cleaning up, the quiet, happy sounds of a family filling the small kitchen. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a new phone, a new number, but the old world still tried to find me. It was a text from a headhunter. The city's largest, most prestigious Bay Street law firm wanted to see me. They were offering a full partnership, a corner office, a staggering, 7-figure salary. They wanted to buy my name, my story, my reputation as the lawyer who took down Viktor Petrov. 5 years ago, it would have been my dream. I looked at the text, at the glowing promise of money and power. Then I looked at Luca, who was trying to get a stubborn spot of pancake batter off the counter. I looked at Anya, who was humming to herself as she put the syrup away. I silenced the phone and tossed it onto the counter, screen down. "Who wants to read the bedtime story?" I asked, picking up a dish towel. Luca smiled. "I think it's your turn." I had walked away from an empire, and in its place, I had found a home. Sometimes, you have to lose everything to find what's real. If this story reminded you of the power of starting over, please like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to find their own strength.